to think about as far as, I've had a couple of lessons about denominationalism and things like that here recently, and this is really lopsided. I don't know, I may need to just move over this way or move over this way to kind of help out a little bit, I don't know. So, yeah, it's really lopsided. And as far as denominationalism is concerned, and I've told you this before, it's been a while, but the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which sepulchre means tomb, it's supposed to be the tomb of Jesus. And it's in Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and there are six different Christian groups that use that building for religious matters. And the interesting thing about that is they could not get along. So for 800 years, a Muslim family has been the caretakers of the building because the Christian groups could not get along that were a part of the actual ones that would worship there. So we met the guy that has been the caretaker the last 50 years, Omar. And Omar let us go in. We would go every night to this place, and he would let us go into places that usually aren't open to the public. So we developed a friendship with Omar. But I thought that was really something. That he's Muslim, and he is the caretaker for a Christian holy site, probably the most holy site that you can find as far as Christianity is concerned. When you look the world over, that people take pilgrimages to, and actually there's a reenactment of the trip to the cross that happens every Friday by one of these Christian denominations. But the Greek Orthodox part of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is very ornate. They've got a lot of lanterns and things that are hanging in there. I'll have to show you some pictures sometime of how different it is on the inside from these different groups of how they use it for their own purposes. But Greek Orthodox is one of those groups that uses that site and lays claim to that site, even though they can't get along and they have to have an outside family take care of the place. So it's very, very interesting. So, Gil Ray, is that you playing your?
I was trying to give you some music.
Oh, thank you. See, I think that's how things start going downhill. Is when one of the elders says that, hey, we need some different music in here, and okay, all right, yeah, let's not play any Greek Orthodox music. Although Dave and I were talking about as far as how conservative they are, they do baptize by immersion, and they don't acknowledge using mechanical instruments in worship. So they're very strict, even though that they still consider themselves Catholic. They're very strict when it comes to the things that they do. If you look at the split that happened in 1054 AD was when the Eastern and Western Orthodox, or the Eastern and Western churches, Catholic churches, split. And then they became pretty much their own entities, even though they both considered themselves to be Catholic. Catholic just means universal, the universal church. And both lay claim to having their foundation going back to the first century. And if you recall, when we talked about Paul's man of sin in his letters to the Thessalonians, that he was talking about how even the things that were going to happen in the days of Paul and Timothy and the apostles was going to lead to further division down the road. So you could have evidence of some of that division taking place in the first century, way back when the church started. So anyway, okay, so I'll get off that. We'll get into our lesson for tonight, talking about the plagues. We've talked about several plagues so far. What do I do with my Bible? I'm going to need it. We've talked about several of the plagues so far. What was the first one?
Water.
Okay, so blood in the water, or the water turns to blood. And where did the water turn to blood? Okay, it was everywhere. It was in the river, it was in buckets, it was in pails, it was in ponds, it was in cisterns, everywhere it turned. And who did it affect? Everybody. Which would include who? Okay, so Pharaoh and his palace, and the Egyptians, and who else? The Israelites, okay, because they're there in the land of Goshen. And then the second one, the second plague that we had was what? Frogs. Frogs in the houses, frogs everywhere, frogs in the ovens. And it wasn't just about them being a pest. Remember, we talked about the deities that the Egyptians looked to when it comes to the Nile River, and frogs actually being considered deity, and that it was illegal to kill a frog. So now you've got frogs everywhere, and then they want them to die. Pharaoh asked for those frogs to be taken away, and then you have piled up in a heap, you have all these dead frogs that are now stinking, that was once looked to as a deity. And it was their idea of family and community is what they looked at toward the frog. So then it was attacked by God and said, okay, so you're putting all your faith and your trust in these things. And so I'm going to show you where your faith and trust should lie. It's not in these things that I created, but in me. So he shows that. We talked about how loneliness can affect people when we looked at the plague of the frogs, and how family and community is important, but it can only be found in the way that God intended to be found. Then we had the third one was what? What do we have? We had the dust or the dirt turning into these annoying biting insects, whether it was lice or biting flies or ticks or whatever it may have been, these annoying insects, and we related that to worry. That worry treats us the same way. Worry will nag at us and cause us anxiety and problems, and that we can't find a solution for worry in the world. We can only look to God for that solution for worry and the things that challenge us. And then we came to swarms of flies or swarms of insects. That was the fourth plague. And we got into that last time. It's been a little while since we talked about this. And so we find that in Exodus chapter 8, starting in verse 20. And we see that that these are brought into the land. So now we have, this is the fourth one. And we find this is a plague specific, it was a specific message to Pharaoh, because we see that God is wanting there to be division between us today and the world. He was also wanting there to be division between his people of that day, the Israelites, and the rest of the world. So he's showing that through this plague that that's going to happen, that there is separation. How did he show that there was separation between the Israelites and the Egyptians with this plague of insects, the fourth plague? Remember what it was? Okay, it didn't affect the Israelites. The other three did. It affected them. Now, this is the first one that they were isolated. They were prevented from having to live through this plague. So now Pharaoh saw that they were actually different. I brought last time, we talked about some bugs and things like that. I had it here somewhere. And we talked about how they would revere these different insects. Well, I don't know what to do with it. I have mine. There it is. And the one that we looked at in particular was the beetle. Now, what particular beetle did we look at last time? You remember? Yeah, we talked about tumblebugs and doodlebugs and all those. But this one in particular that we looked at, and these are the amulets that I was talking about. We passed these around. So it's the beetle on the top, and then the bottom it has some engraving on it that would be relevant to a name. Usually it's a cartouche of a certain some way of royalty. But they would use these and they would wear them as amulets because they would what they would do is they would think that they would ward off evil. So if they wear them as a bracelet or as a necklace or in a brooch or something like that, that these would ward off evil. That's how important. These are actually some authentic amulets that have been found in Egypt that people would have used and would have worn. Now we looked at Khepri being the God of creation and life and renewal, and we see that right in the center that it's represented by a beetle, and then and in human form has the head of a beetle, which that's kind of odd. The whole body of a beetle is the head of a person, but that's the way that they do things. And what in particular about this pagan god, what did it do? What purpose did it serve? Do you remember? What's above, on the picture to the left, what's above the beetle? The sun. So what did this beetle do? Do you remember what they thought this beetle would do? It'd roll the sun around through the underworld and then bring it back around to where it would shine again. And it's represented by the dung beetle. So they would see the dung beetle rolling around, rolling around dung, and it gets a protective coating of sand on it. And so that's what they say. They said, oh, this beetle is rolling the sun around each day. You know, it takes it to where we can see it, and then it goes to the underworld, and then brings it back around again. Isn't that something? So they're looking at a bug to be this god. And the reason for that is they thought that this deity was self-created. Because the dung beetle lays its eggs in the feces, and it's born out of the feces. So they thought, oh, it comes from nothing. It must have created itself. So that's how important this Egyptian god was, because it would lay its eggs and eat the contents, and was born in these dung balls here and live in it. And so they thought that it created themselves because of that. So it was we're looking at why and how this would relate to the Egyptians, how it would relate to us. So the way we're going to look at it is, would you consider putting faith in a beetle or an insect as being putting value in the wrong thing? Do you remember how many gods I'd said that the Egyptians looked to? Over 2,000 different gods. Okay? They were a polytheistic civilization. In other words, they had multi-gods that they looked to serve. So this one in particular, the dung beetle, that was very important to them. The god of creation, rebirth, and renewal. And it's just, they're putting their value in something that is the wrong thing. So would it seem foolish to us to put value in a beetle? Now, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're one of those that says, "Oh, don't squish a bug because it is one of God's creatures." I don't feel that way about snakes. I think there's plenty of snakes, but it's one of God's creatures, and I'll be thankful and give God the glory after I kill one. But there are some things that we look at that we give value in that are worthless to do that. So what kinds of things do we put value in today? What kinds of things does the world put value in that are foolish? Just as foolish as putting value into a bug like this. Oh, money. Now, Robert, is money necessary? Like I said before, I heard somebody say that money's not everything, but it's right up there close to oxygen, right? I mean, it's necessary to live, isn't it? But can we have the wrong value that's attached to money? Yes, if our whole existence is about the pursuit of money, then that's where it's wrong. That's putting value in the wrong place, in something that's foolish. What did we find in 1 Timothy 6 that Paul said about money? Did he say money is the root of all evil? Money is the root of all kinds of evil? Okay, what is? The love of it. The love of money. So could you replace money with anything else in that verse? The love of anything could be a source of all kinds of evil, could it not? Sure it could. If we elevate anything above God, is that putting the wrong value on something else? Absolutely. We're to love God first. Jesus said he came to bring division. The division is you follow God first. I came here because God sent me, and my words that you hear are the words from God. So he's saying, listen, if it means that you have to leave your family to follow me, so be it. So be it. And so we cannot place other people above our love and devotion to God. We love God, and because we love God, then we show our love for others. Correct? But John, do you have something? Absolutely. And how many times have we been guilty of putting our faith in other people and elevating our faith above our faith in God? For instance, sadly, with cultural changes that we've had that's happened just in our lifetime, how many times have we seen somebody forsake the truth and forsake the faith because somebody that they love, somebody that was close to them, somebody in their family that was living a sinful life, and they started condoning it because they were related to them. They were their child, whatever. And now they have turned from the truth, even though they knew the truth, but because it was so close to them, they now said, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's okay. Robert?
I've seen people be broke up over something wrong that some of their family done with got out of the church.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, is it submission to God when we do things like that? What are we submitting to? Who are we submitting to when we allow someone else to change God's truth? Exactly. I mean, is that self-denial? Is that what that is? No. Submission is self-denial, isn't it? Submission is giving in to someone else. And if we're to be submissive to God, then He has all authority and He alone. And if we say, well, you know what, I think God got this one wrong, then what are we doing? We're telling telling Him that He made a mistake. Instead of Satan being out there using his wiles and his trickery, because that's exactly what he's doing. See, Satan's greatest and most effective tool is doubt. Isn't it? It's doubt. What happened in the Garden of Eden? Isn't that exactly what Satan did to Eve? Didn't he plant doubt, the seeds of doubt to Eve when he's saying, hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. God just doesn't want you to know everything He knows. That's why you're not supposed to eat from that tree. So he put that doubt in there, and the same thing can happen to us. Can we stand back and say, wait a minute, if God is love, and this person over here says that they want to love, the same sex or whatever, then how can I not love them and their actions if God is love? See, Satan does that. It's not God changing. It's we are moving farther away from God. That's the difference. So these things that we place value on in the eyes of God are foolish because it takes our eyes off of Him. So money is a big part of that. What else? What other thing can we have value in that's the wrong thing? I've got a couple here, but you may have some that are different. Self? Okay, absolutely. If we're looking to just serve ourselves, then yes, that's putting the value in the wrong place. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't take care of ourselves and don't pay attention to ourselves. It's just if we're living for self, that's different. That's different. All right, what else? Prestige, career. Let's just say success. If we look at success being measured by how far we move up in a company, Rick, do you have something to add to that?
Back to your previous point before you asked for other things. I think sometimes we have difficulty separating loving the sinner and opposing the sin.
Yep, you're exactly right.
And I wonder sometimes if that has cost us a lot of people because, I mean, obviously, we're not supposed to love the sin, but I think it gets separated sometimes that we still love because we're all sinners. We all fall short. And I think sometimes that gets lost.
And we can go about it the wrong way if we have the wrong attitude about it. If we look to elevate ourselves, and and we're looking to judge, then that's where Jesus said it's wrong. Because we have to first understand that we're all sinners. that we all need the grace of God, the mercy of God, the gift of God being His Son. We all need that. We all do. None of us are without sin. And when we come to the point to where in our life to where we know between right and wrong, and we can choose to do right or wrong, it's up to us, then we all are going to be guilty of sin. But yes, Rick, I mean, if we are focused so much on attaching permanently that sin to the person, then that's a mistake. That's a mistake. And we have to be very careful about that, because everybody is a soul. Now, if we offer the opportunity to show them the truth and they reject it, now we can't do anything about that. But we still have to go to them. It doesn't mean that we condone sin. It just means that we have to have the ability to, and the boldness to call sin out when we see it. Even when it's people that are closest to us. And it's hard. Man, it's hard. But that's what we have to do, because we're not elevating ourselves above anybody else. Yeah, go ahead.
Don't we can also drive people away.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, there's an old adage, love the sinner, hate the sin, right? But yet, as you stated, if they know the truth, you deny the truth, deny. But remember 7 times 7. I mean,
Yeah.
we got to be careful, and we need to interfere, not drive.
We do, but we also have to be careful of, again, not condoning sin. If someone is willfully sinning and they know that they're willfully sinning, see, a lot of cases, because people are ignorant to what God's truth is, they have to be taught what God's truth is, they may not even be aware that they're involved in sin. And that's where we come into play, is where we show them what God's truth is. Now, if they come in, they see the truth, and they willfully continue in that sin, then that's where there's a problem. They cannot continue to be in the fellowship of us, with us, because they're willfully sinning. That's exactly what Paul's letter in 1 Corinthians was all about. It said, listen, you've got adultery happening right, and it's being condoned right inside the church. And we've got to address this. So what happened? We find in 2 Corinthians, we find that apparently that was resolved, and that fellow was brought back into the fold because the discontinuation of the sin. It wasn't that, maybe we're going to accept them more now. No, it was the sin stopped. But yes, we have to be very careful to not push people away, because we want them to come in to be able to hear the truth. But we also, once the truth is known, we can't willfully sin. Now,
I don't know. Where do we draw? Here's the thing. Where do we draw that line? I mean, did they get to come here 3 times?
No, see, that's the thing. I mean, I don't think you could. I'll give you an example. Brother Bill Watkins, his first work in ministry was in Miami, Florida. And he had studied with and converted a guy that worked for the mafia. He was in the mob. And his wife was a prostitute. So he baptized and converted both of those, that husband and wife. Bill said for 6 months, he still talked like he worked with the mafia. He still had a foul mouth. And she still dressed like she was a prostitute. But through love, they directed them on how to change. It wasn't okay, you got to stop this right now. It wasn't one of those things. They worked with them, they eased them into it to where they realized that, this is what I need to do to change. I got another example. A guy that was one of my roommates on one of the trips I took. He grew up religious, semi-religious, and then he got into college and was living with his girlfriend, and then they got serious, and they stayed living together, and they were committed to each other. And then he was converted and became a Christian, and and the congregation that he was worshiping at did not tell him that they needed to be married. So he said, so we didn't get married. We thought we were fine. Then I can't remember if they moved or went to another congregation, and then the elders said, listen, we've got to address this. He's like, if I'd have known, we would have taken care of it. But they just didn't know. They were ignorant to it. See, it's how we handle it but as far as where the line is, I would say that's probably going to be different for different people, right? Some are going to want to know right away, and some are going to take some easing into it, but still we have to head in the right direction. Jesse.
I think personally, most important thing, when we approach somebody, they need to know how we stand.
Yeah.
They need to know that we are against their sin. And then start with that and love.
Well, I think you need to flip those. I think they need to know that they're loved first, and because they're loved, here's what we've got to address.
They still need to know how we stand.
Sure. Yeah.
When you know what Jesus said, eternal life, you want what you got, you got to do what he did. And you stand firm on your
Yeah.
personal approach.
Well,
Where you stand, because lots of times they think you're telling me that I'm wrong, but you're not really believing.
yeah.
You know it's wrong.
Well, again, the manner in which it's handled is very important. Because, I think we probably all know of situations to where somebody was beat over the head with what they were doing wrong, instead of, speaking to them in love and showing them the right way. Because there's two different ways of doing it. Some people respond by being beat over the head. Most people don't. Most people are, the admonition that you were talking about, David, in class, that gentle persuasion, that gentle, being rebuked, that is the proper way of doing it, because that's what Paul was saying in Ephesians, is saying speaking the truth in love is different. It's a better way of handling it. It's a more Christian way of handling it. I tell you, Gilray, when you said that we can't drive people away, we've seen that happen time and again, to where something was not handled. I guess it wasn't handled. I wouldn't say it wasn't in love. Because it's just that it wasn't appropriate in the way that the manner in which it was handled. Yeah, exactly. And I think we all have things in mind where people were driven away because of that. My dad has one sibling, and she relocated to Texas, and so he went down there to help her get settled in and everything, and so he tried to get her settled in with a church family. So he took her to this congregation, and not one person spoke to him, not one person. So my dad decided he was going to stand in the middle of the lobby and introduce himself to everybody that was going out the door. So guess how wonderful a relationship my aunt had with that congregation. None. Never went back. So our actions, so that's another thing. When people come in here that we don't know, it doesn't matter how long they've been around here. If we don't know them, we need to introduce ourselves. And even if we've met them before and we don't remember who they are, hey, still greet them. Because the worst thing we can do is have somebody from the world come out into here to find a refuge from the world, and then we don't treat them the right way, and they go right back out and say, I knew they were a bunch of hypocrites. See, that's on us. That is on us.
The majority of the people that come here that are in sin don't need us to tell them.
No, you're right. You're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right.
We've got a congregation here with numerous people with numerous personalities, and that person we need to find out who can communicate. Talk to the person, and you'll know pretty much who in this congregation is going to be pretty close to the same.
Yep.
Communicate.
Okay, so I'm going to tell them myself. I tried to do that a few months ago. So we had some visitors. I think it was somebody that worked with Sarah. And so they're sitting on the back row, this young family. And so I go introduce myself to them. And I what did I do? I read a book by its cover. That's what I did, okay? So I thought that maybe they could relate to somebody else in the assembly, and so I went and got Giovanni. And so I took Giovanni back there and introduced Giovanni. And so they're kind of talking in broken English, both of them. And then Giovanni's like, "Do you speak Spanish?" She's like, "No. We're from, where was it?"
They were from,
Oh, thanks for that. That's hilarious. Yeah. No, it was Micronesia or something. Yeah, something. I was on opposite ends of the world, and so I'm trying to get somebody that can relate to them. Nope, didn't happen. So, yeah, that was a little embarrassing. And Giovanni's like, "I can't help you." It's like, okay. And yeah, exactly. So, I learned my lesson on that one of not to prejudge somebody, and I hope that's not the reason they didn't come back. But anyway, I tried. But that is a good point. I mean, we've got so many different types of personalities. We've got so many different types of backgrounds. If we see somebody and we know somebody that can relate to them, hey, go find them and introduce them. Because we're trying to be welcoming. And I have heard time and again that people have come here to visit that this is a warming and welcoming congregation. And I believe that. We get here early. We stay late. The lights get turned out on people still in here talking. A lot of congregations, Chris does that to you. He turns the lights out on you. Some congregations, they show up right at the time to start. And as soon as the amen said, they're out. See, that doesn't happen here. So that shows that we're loving with each other so we can be loving with people on the outside to bring them in here to our church family. But we need to make sure we handle it the right way when we do that. So yeah, when we value the wrong things, we go about things the wrong way. That's being of the world and not being of the things of God. So putting value in things that are foolish. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Hey, if we're trying to teach somebody, or somebody asks a question, we have got to be able to back it up. It doesn't mean right off the top of our head, but we'll say, "Oh, you know what? I can't give you book, chapter, and verse right away, but I'll get it to you." So we can't come to them and say, "Well, here's what I believe." Well, why? Why do we believe it? Well, sure.
And theirs is as valuable as mine.
Absolutely. Yep. And I mean, why are there 40,000 different denominations? Because everybody has an opinion. Everybody has a certain way of doing things. And here's the challenge that we have that we're competing against in the world. That article I read about about people being converted to something that's different than the world, but again not going far enough. Is how many congregations, how many religious groups do we have out there today that appeal to come as you are, stay as you are? How many are out there? You can live however you want to live. Come in here. We're going to love you. We're not going to judge you. And see, how is that being drawn closer to God if we're not going to change at all? If we can be close to God and still live worldly, I mean, that's very appealing from Satan's standpoint, isn't it? That's exactly what he wants. But that's what's out there. People feel like, hey, I can still talk like I want to talk and dress like I want to dress and hang out and do these things that maybe I shouldn't do, but they don't mind that I do it. See, that's what's out there today. What we're offering is, listen, we're the refuge. The church is the refuge from the world. That's the difference, Robert.
God didn't say just don't eat of this now. We should not touch it. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
Don't touch it. So if we're trying to convert somebody, they need to know what we know is evil and what is good.
Yeah, but we've got to be able to back it up with the Word. I had in particular, I was talking to somebody, and it was they were at I spent time on this a couple of weeks. They were going to a non-denominational okay? If they are separate and apart from the church that Jesus purchased, then it is a denomination. We all understand that, right? So it doesn't matter. It's just that they don't attach to any other committee, group, convention here on earth. They just want to be autonomous. And so they were going to this non-denominational, I want to put that in quotes, non-denominational group, and they were asked about if they had elders, and said, I don't know. And so they were studying about elders and reading about elders in Timothy and in Titus, and what the importance of elders and why they had elders and what the qualifications were. So this guy goes to his pastor and says, why don't we have elders? He says, because we use the pastor system. Okay, now where is he going to find that in Scripture? Where is he going to find that? First off, if you use the pastor system, then what system are you supposed to be using? Elders, presbyters, bishops, shepherds, all the names that we have in Scripture for these men that are supposed to be qualified to serve in this capacity. But instead, the non-denominational use the pastor system, which is one guy in charge pretty much, right? Isn't that what the pastor system is? And so this guy comes back, he says, he said we use the pastor system. Said, okay, let's find that in Scripture. The word pastor is used one time in Ephesians, one time. And it's not even in that capacity because evangelist is separate than pastor. So if a pastor is an evangelist and that's what their purpose is, then why wouldn't they be considered interchangeable? They're not. It's two different things, two different people, two different positions or offices. I don't like using that word, but inside the church. So anyway, boy, we covered a lot, didn't we? Talking about valuing the wrong things. We'll continue on with this. We're going to look at we talked about money. We talked about success a little bit. We'll also look at the draw of celebrity nowadays. Man alive, and how it's changed over the decades as far as who's a celebrity and how to be a celebrity and all that kind of stuff and how people put value in it. Okay.